Hello and welcome. I'm Bigfoot and this is episode 13 of my Let's Play series. So, last episode I was fiddling around with my research labs and my science and my rocket launches, silos stuff. And what I need to get on with now, finally, which is the last real part of this before I can start switching stuff on, is the oil setup. But before I can get there, I need to fill in some lake. However, before I can do that, I need to move the time lapse. So let's have a quick look where we are. Okay. So, yep, I've filled in all of that. I mean, obviously I've got this corner up here. That's where my nuclear power is going to go when I get there. But for the oil, which is going to be down here somewhere, I definitely need to move the camera, fill in some lake, and get cracking with that. That is the plan. Okay, so oil. Now, it's been a few days since I was here, and that's a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's the Snooker World Championships, and one of the semi-finals was particularly compelling. The second reason is because oil is difficult. I mean, all of this is difficult, to be honest, but it's difficult in a sense that it's difficult to work out a geometry that works out elegantly. Now, in my last in the last 2000 SPM bases that I did, and to be honest, those are probably the only two relevant ones when it comes to oil. If you're looking for an SPM base, I didn't really take oil seriously. I didn't really get it right up until I started to look at SPM. So, if we were to consider those two, the first 2000 SPM, I kind of, in fact, why don't we have a look at them, and I'll take you through my thinking. Alright, so here we are in the first 2000 SPM base that I did. And the approach that I kind of followed for this one was almost like a linear factory approach. Let's turn that off. So I had this bus down the middle, and I just worked my way away from it until I ran out of things to build. Ran out of things that I needed to build. And it's got the two main buses, which is one bus with basically the other stuff squeezed in the middle. So I've got the train station squeezed in the middle, and I've got the chemical plants that balance the heavy and light fuels and petroleum in the middle, all kind of squeezed. I think might have got some plastic down here. But it is more or less a linear approach. I've got two more or less identical buses either side. They kind of just keep going until I don't need them anymore. And although, you know, when I say it works, it works. It's a factory. All of this stuff's got to work. It's got to get from A to B. You know, I'm not really worried about that. That's kind of from a factory working perspective. I think I've got enough experience in that. What I'm talking about from a working perspective is from a geometry perspective, and also from an elegance perspective. So from a geometry perspective, it just ends up being long and thin, and particularly, you know, it's a long, thin rectangle, and it just is not as elegant as, you know, I would prefer. So when I laid this down, I was quite happy with it. You know, still quite happy with it, but I came away from it thinking, you know, what would I do if I was going to do it again differently? Because from an elegance perspective, by having these two things either side of the bus, it means that there are occasions where these underground pipes have to cross, and that is always annoying. I always end up with like little bits like this, or, you know, down here where I've got a little kink, and although it's not much, it's, you know, this is the sort of thing that really annoys me, like this. Although it's not much and the factory still functions, it annoys me. So when I approached the second SPM factory, I wanted to tackle it with a different strategy in mind. I wanted to have a different kind of design perspective, a different design idea. So let's go into that one. So with this one, the different idea was, instead of doing like a linear bus, what if I tried a circular bus? Because, you know, with pipes, you know, we don't need to designate a direction of flow. You know, if this was conveyor belts, doing loops around would be a pain. But because it's pipes and we don't have to worry ourselves with, you know, direction of flow, a loop is it was a really nice idea of how to tackle this problem. And, you know, from a geometry perspective, it worked out a much more elegant rectangle. So you can see, here's my kind of loop that I've got running around of pipes, and then the processes kind of sit in or outside of that loop. And it gave me a lot of freedom to play around with how things worked, because I didn't have to worry about, as I said, I didn't have to worry about the direction of flows. So this loop idea for the pipes, I really like, and I still really like, and that's what I'm going to try and do with this base. It solves the problem in many different ways. From a geometry perspective, a loop is much more elegant, and it can fill the space in a much more square shape. Let's just put it like that. Let's just put it like that. You know, the long thin rectangle, that works. It's just, it could be better, and this is what I think is the way to make it better. So I want to try and make this in my new base. Now, obviously, this is purely SPM, so there's stuff that is here. No, the wrong way around. There's stuff that I want to make that isn't in this base. You know, stuff like explosives or flamethrower fuel, or maybe it's just those two that I can think of. But anyway, so it needs to. I mean, explosives is not insignificant. You know, the amount of chemical plants you need is significant. So there are differences that are going to be here. I'm not just going to copy this. I mean, it's going to be completely redesigned. But the strategy, the thinking, you know, the way that I approach the problem, I'm going to try and do the same with this new base. So let's go back to the new base. So my thinking is, once again, it's early stages, but I always tend to think about this stuff very, very early days to try and, I don't want to have to continually build and rebuild this stuff. So the thinking is, I want to have a loop. So the loop's going to come something like this, I think. I'm going to try and put the train stations in here, so that they're kind of in the middle of the loop. Then the oil's going to come off the train stations, come through. I mean, the train station is going to be out here somewhere, so the oil's going to come through to the oil refiners, which is going to be here. Same again on this side, oil refineries here. And then they will feed the loop, which will run in front of them. So I can fit stuff inside and outside the loop, and then I can use the bus to feed in the stuff that I need for the conveyor belts where they need to go. So that's kind of how I'm going to approach it. Now, I was going to try and, if I was going to try and approach from a linear perspective, this is what I've been thinking about the last few days. Because the train stations are in the middle, the linear approach would pass all of those belts and all those pipes underneath the train stations. So that I don't want to do that. I want to have the oil come in. The oil will operate along the center line of the whole oil setup, and then the loop will run around it, which I think is an elegant way to approach this problem. So that's what I've basically started to do. I started to lay out a few blocks that I know that I need, and that I need a lot of them, so why not deal with them first up? So we've got plastic and explosives. This is like a half a block, so I need 12 of these half blocks. I'm going to have 3 here, 3 at the bottom, 6 on the other side. That would deal with the plastic. I'll do the same with the explosives, except that I have 2 of these kind of mini blocks, 2 down here and then 4 on the other side. I think what I'm going to do then is run the oil pipes across, and then deal with the balancing, which is the chemical plants that convert the heavy, light fuel, petroleum, that stuff. So all of that balancing stuff I think is going to go here. And I'm going to try and squeeze the train station. Yeah, that's the plan. I'm just going to see how things go at the moment. But yeah, that's kind of the strategy with regards to this factory. You know, the different ways of approaching it with this oil setup. Um, because as I said, because we don't have to worry about flow direction, there are other factory strategy options we can use that wouldn't be applicable if we were just doing conveyor belts. So let's just carry on building, I suppose. So I've been finding myself going through this kind of circular pattern of logic, whereby I want to pursue a plan which is non-symmetrical, and then I get annoyed because it's not symmetrical. it's, I mean, it is completely absurd. But let me just go through a particular example. Right. So way back when I started off over here setting out the bus, I had two choices with regards to where I wanted to put this path. I could put it over to the right of the racetrack, or I put it to the left of the racetrack. And because I've got the path over here, kind of just to one side of the railway track, my instinct was to do the same. So that would mean putting it on the left-hand side of the racetrack. But because I was like, oh, I don't want it to be symmetrical, I want it to be different, I was like, I almost abandoned my first reaction and then put the path on the other side. So that's the decision I made at this point. And then as I working my way up the map wasn't a problem. But when I found my way into coal and the steam power, it's suddenly awkward. So I haven't really fixed it. What I've done is I'm just going to run the path through the racetrack, and then I'm going to pop the path out the other side in the same place. And looking at it now, I could probably have shifted this all over to the right, moved, accommodated the path with a bit of a gap. But at the time, this was a decision that I made. I am a little bit annoyed about that now, looking at it. But hey, I'm not moving it. That's where it's going. So now, working my way down to the oil setup, what I've decided to do, because I don't want my non-symmetrical racetrack, is I've decided to kink this racetrack over here, because otherwise it would have followed all the way down here in exactly the same way that the one is on the other side. So it would have been completely symmetrical. It would have worked its way around the racetrack, around the railway stations in the exact same manner. Would have come around. Would have been boring in my opinion. So at the point that I was here, I decided I'm going to kink the racetrack round. I know it looks like this is a dead end at the moment, and I haven't thought about it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the racetrack through the science labs, move all of this research over to the right, and kind of sacrifice a few research labs to kind of bring a bit of a diagonal path through. So I just haven't got to that part yet, but that's what the plan is. But because I've kinked this racetrack over, I've now suddenly got all of this gap to fill, which is a challenge. Science less of a problem because I could just fit that into more or less whatever. As we work our way down, it starts to become more tricky. So although it's not symmetrical, the factory processes are. So over here we've got 3 lanes of plastic and then 2 lanes of explosives. Over here we've got 3 lanes of plastic and then 2 lanes of explosive. It's just that I've got the path separating down here and I've got the racetrack separating in here. And that's caused all by the position of this path. If this path was over here, where my instinct would have originally put it, I would have had no problems. And then also, because This path would have run right through the stations for my oil. So I've had to move the... Anyway, the point is, this whole non-symmetrical thing has got its down points. However, you know, what I've done, I filled the gap really, really well, and what I've come up with is a really nice setup for my sulfur and my sulfuric acid, which I'm really, really pleased with. Yeah, it's filled the space nicely. I've managed to do it really well. So even though I've been annoyed along this road in the last few hours trying to fill this space, and when you watch the time lapse, because that's really where it will become apparent, you'll see that I build stuff, take it down, build stuff, take it down, build stuff, take it down throughout this whole oil setup. It's because it's been painful. It's difficult to show that process through this Let's Play without completely overwhelming the video with why I'm demolishing certain things, you know, without going through every little detail, which I think would be boring. But now that I've fixed it, now that I've filled the space, I'm like, yeah, you game, yeah. That pleases me greatly. Pleases me greatly. Okay, so that's this kind of bottom half done. I'm going to build some oil refineries over here, and then I need to move on to rocket fuel and solid fuel and nuclear fuel, and I need to find somewhere to put flamethrower fuel and lubricant. I'm just looking at this space up here. That looks like a nice space to put something. Yeah, so that's next. And there we have power and lighting and an oil setup. Huzzah! I'm really, really pleased with how it's turned out. It's turned out freaking excellent. If you're looking at this and thinking that there's a lot of pipes, there's a lot of pipes. I do this for a couple of different reasons. So first up, you know, a pipe, primarily it's got to get a fluid from A to B. That's its primary purpose. But it also acts as a reservoir of that fluid. Now, I've had a few comments over the years whilst I've been doing this YouTubing, and pipes are one of the things that people comment on quite, well, not necessarily a lot, but they get quite passionate about them. And I think that's because in vanilla, if you're using just single pipes, then they automatically snap to each other, and that can be awkward. So to get around that, people tend to use underground pipes. And if you use a lot of underground pipes, this is what he taught me, then the fluid, you don't get that same reservoir effect. The fluid is almost instantly transported from A to B on the underground pipes. There's no fluid stored in the part that's underground. So if you use a lot of underground pipes, then you don't tend to get this reservoir effect. You just tend to use whatever you produce. But for me, I like the look of the pipes, and those vanilla pipes, I don't like them. I never have. And now, like, I've got setups with multiple pipes next to each other and gaps between different fluids, so I could easily use the vanilla pipes, but I just can't stand them. It wouldn't work for these kind of refinery setups that I have. You'd have to use a lot more underground pipes, and that's what I've seen people do. I don't know. That's fine if that's the way you want to go. That's fine. But I like the look of the pipes and this reservoir. This kind of, I mean, there's going to be thousands and thousands of units of fluid just in these pipes themselves. I know I've got all of these tanks over here to store the fluid, but that's more because I need to be able to measure the fluid so that I can use it for my logistic network. So I need some storage somewhere. I may as well make it proportionate to the rest of the oil setup that I have, and that's what I've come up with. But the pipes themselves, they will act as a reservoir, and that's a useful effect. So that's one reason why I have multiple pipes. The second reason is because it helps me identify what each clump of pipes is for. So I can look at this clump of pipes and know that these 3 are for light oil, these 2 are for heavy oil, these 4 are for petroleum, and then these 2, one is oil, one is water. And the way to tell the difference is that the oil is the one that ends. The oil isn't the one that carries on around the loop. The oil just stops at the refinery. The water, I need that pretty much everywhere around this loop. So that's how I can read what these pipes are doing whilst I'm playing around with it and it's dry like this. It just helps cut down on mistakes. So those are the 2 reasons for the pipes. And I suppose if we look at the map, we can see what I mean when I say the loop, because you can see like this is the circular bus of pipes that I've got set up. I've kind of split it up into 2 different areas here and here. So this is just dealing with plastic and explosives. So all I need is petroleum and water, and then I've got all of the oil. I've pretty much got everything coming through here. Oil. Both oil, the heavy oil, light oil, petroleum, water, and 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it, yeah. So that you can see the circular process. So the trains come in the middle. These line of pipes is for the oil that goes to the refineries. Those refineries output to this loop, and then whatever I need to take place can take place around that loop. I mean, it does look excellent. I'm really, really chuffed with how it's turned out. I know it's the first real area that I've built these curves. I should have. I think I'm going to be just as pleased. Well, maybe not as pleased. It's not as a condensing area. When I get to the, I need to fill in all of these. There's a lot of blanks here with regards to the racetrack, and the curves make a huge difference. Whereas down here, because it's a lot more filled in, I needed to fill in where the curves were going to go. And now that I've done it, it looks freaking excellent. I'm really pleased. And the distribution of processes is good. I like it. Oh, it's excellent. It's excellent. I've also set up power, obviously, and that grid is coming on really well. So I'm trying to. The power around the whole base is going to be distributed via the racetrack. That's why these lines are only going in one direction. In a normal base, I would have similar sort of electricity kind of space allotted running next to the path, probably running horizontally. But because the philosophy is for the racetrack to distribute the electricity around the network, I knew that I was going to have horizontal ones around the racetrack, so that's going to do that job. It just means in the short term, whilst I haven't finished the racetrack, I'm going to have to set up temporary lines. That's not the end of the world. With the part of the racetrack that I have wired up, just the whole thing is very pleasing. I've been sitting here looking at it for a few minutes, just looking at it, thinking, what could I change? What needs to be improved? Okay, so there's too much space between these electricity lines up here, so I need to shift these ones down a little bit. That's not the end of the world. One of the big cock-ups that I have made, and I'll fix it later down the line. There's only so much I can do. The cock-up is around my rocket fuel, so I don't need that for some time. By the time I do need it, I'll have robots, and it'll be much easier to take it down. So here we have my ammunition lines that are going to feed my perimeter wall, and I've completely forgot to put them in. So I need to take down all of this which is my rocket fuel setup, pop those ammunition lines in. I need to cut these pipes back as well so that it'll run through here, and then rebuild it, but I don't need rocket fuel for a very long time. So from here we're going to set up some oil stations. So I've got a few patches of oil that I can use. I've got this patch over here which is next to which is in the final straight, and I've got this little patch down here. So I'm going to join them together, make some new railway stations next to this one, feed it in, get some oil into the system. The goal the immediate goal is to unlock advanced oil processes. So that's the first goal. And then am absolutely desperate for some upgrades to my turrets. Me and the biters have reached some kind of entente cordiale whereby as long as I don't fill in any more lake, or at least, no, that's the wrong way to say it. If as long as I don't take any landfill out of the box down here, or the boxes up here, no, here, as long as I don't take any landfill out there, they'll leave me alone to a certain extent. They'll still attack me periodically, but it's not sustained. It's not any kind of anything I need to worry about. It might knock out the odd turret every now and then, but over the long period of time, I can build a plenty. I don't have to worry about it too much. But the moment I switch it on, that's going to change. So those are the goals. First goal is I want advanced oil, just so I can set up the rest of this oil setup while I'm here. I don't really want to refine much oil using the basic process. I want to use the proper process so I can get all of those other oils which I will need. So that's first priority, and then second priority is upgrades to my turrets. They're desperate for it, absolutely desperate. I suppose time lapse. Let's have a quick look at the time lapse. Let's see where we are. Here we are. I filled the screen really nicely. I mean, and from up here, it looks awesome, doesn't it? I think it looks freaking awesome. I've left this gap because it's getting increasingly more and more difficult to drive around in my little car. I've got pipes here, there, and everywhere where I haven't got underground pipes long enough to stretch, so these will get filled in later. What I need to do is I need to switch on the oil. I need to get the trains going. That's what I need to do. So, once again, we are finally poised, ready to go. Hopefully, I haven't made any mistakes. Everything's going to do what I hope it should do. So, let's get things going. The big switch on is underway. Finally. Finally. Ugh. So we've got loads of plastic and I've got a fair amount of sulfur. So next to switch on is iron and steel. Okay, so once again, everything is coiled up, ready to go. I just need to turn it on. This is all getting very exciting. I'm very excited about switching all this on. This is cool. And now we have copper all ready to go. If it's becoming a bit of a pattern, it's because these points where I bring in the resources for the first time, it's one of those. They're one of those kind of time lapse set pieces that I mentioned way back when. I set the frame rate high so that it captures the resources coming in and out, and then as the more and more resources come in, I lower the frame rate. So it's just one of those moments where I like to capture very specifically with the time lapse. So I've got everything set up. I just need to essentially connect up the fuel and then get the trains going. Everything else has been set up and sorted, just so that the time lapses can capture everything all in one go. So let's get everything going. And now we have computer chips ready to go. Well, green and red ones anyway. And that is computer chips. If you can see that, a lot of these belts are empty, and that's because the trains are off. I've brought in, I don't know, a dozen or so loads of iron, dozen or so loads of copper. Even coal, I stopped coal hours ago, so that's not got a lot in it. I think that might be running a little bit dry. So I'm essentially just kind of still going slow, still not sure. Just want to, I've got the set amount of resources that I've got. I want to feed that through the factory. I'm going to test it. It helps to test everything whilst I keep an eye on it and make sure it gets from A to B in the right places. And it also means that I get less attention from the biters. Now, this area is done. I obviously need to move on. I can't unlock blue chips until I've got blue science, and I need to unlock that in other areas of the factory. So I need to move the camera to the jumble. However, that is well enough for one episode, and this has been a really long episode. It's been a long old bit of game time as well to get here. I think I've explained why along the way. It's been a tricky part. The oil's always tricky, and getting that done to my satisfaction took a little bit longer than I thought it would. But anyway, all here now. I hope the episode has been good. I hope you've enjoyed it. Till next time.